The warehouse smelled like old metal, damp rope, and a silence too heavy for any god to carry. It stood at the edge of the city like a grave someone forgot to fill in. No traffic, no streetlights, no neighbors, just the rust-colored sky above and oil-stained concrete below. And in the middle of that forgotten place sat a woman, tied to a chair, hands locked behind her back with plastic cable ties. Back straight, face still, head bowed just slightly, not in submission, but in calculation. Her name was Mira Alvarez, 35, former teacher, mother, wife. Her once long black hair hung loose over her shoulders, like a curtain drawn before a play she never agreed to perform. Sweat ran down her spine, slow and cold. In the far corner of the warehouse, huddled against a stack of crates, was her daughter, Sophie, 8 years old, hands duct-taped, knees bruised. A pink scrunchie clung to her wrist like the last piece of innocence no one had ripped away yet. She was crying, soft, breathless sobs, but her mother never turned to look. Not because she didn't care, but because he was still watching. The man standing near the rusted workbench wore no mask. He didn't need one. He had a face you didn't forget. Thick brows, sun-leathered skin, a scar slicing through his beard like a crack in stone. No name was spoken, no need. He pointed lazily to the chair. Standing next to him, frozen, was Leon, Mira's husband, Sophie's father, 38, mechanic, in debt, desperate. Blood trickled from the side of his mouth. One eye was swollen shut. His calloused hands trembled as he held a buzzing clipper, the cord dragging behind him like a leash. The man with the scar looked bored. He said,
"You want your girl to live? Start cutting, all of it."
Leon didn't move. The clippers growled in his grip, a sick metallic sound. Mira slowly raised her eyes. Their gazes met across the dim space, and in that instant, no words were spoken, but a lifetime of love passed between them. He took one step forward, then another, and the sound of the clippers grew louder. Leon raised the clippers. His hand trembled not from fear, from something deeper, more feral, regret, rage, and the knowledge that he'd led them here, to this, to her. He moved closer. Mira sat still, her chin up now, her eyes locked onto his. No tears, no begging, just a quiet defiance. He touched her hair, just barely, and that was enough. Something inside him snapped. He dropped the clippers. One heartbeat, then motion. Leon lunged, a fist connected with the jaw of the nearest thug, sending him crashing into the crates. Another punch to the ribs of the second thug. A scuffle, grunts, scraping boots. Leon dove for the gun on the workbench. He almost made it. Almost, but the scarred man was faster. One step, one aim, one pull. Leon froze mid-motion. Time stood still. A small red bloom spread across his chest. He looked down, then up toward Mira. His lips moved, no sound. Then he fell. Mira screamed. Not elegant, not cinematic, just grief ripped open with the rusted blade. "Leon!" Sophie screamed too, high-pitched, panicked.
"Daddy! Daddy!"
She pulled against the tape around her wrists, crawling toward him with shaking legs. Mira's chair tipped as she threw herself forward, writhing against the restraints. But it was too late. Blood puddled fast beneath him, thick and dark. His eyes didn't close, because eyes don't close when the soul's already gone. The man with the scar looked annoyed. He stepped over Leon's body like it was an empty gas can, picked up the buzzing clippers, walked toward Mira, who was still crying, still screaming, "No, please, please stop." He didn't stop. He gripped her chin.
Now we finish what your coward couldn't.
And the first strip came fast, right down the center of her scalp. Hair fell like ash across her chest. Some of it stuck to her wet cheeks. Some of it landed in the blood on the floor. Mira shook, not from pain, but from the sound, from the humiliation, from knowing her daughter was watching. Sophie wailed behind her.
Mommy! Mommy!
But Mira couldn't comfort her. She was too busy being turned into an example. They didn't kill her. They didn't kill Sophie either. They didn't need to. What they wanted was already taken. The man, the dignity, the message. And so, once Mira's scalp had been stripped bare, once the last strand fell into the blood of her husband, they threw her and Sophie into a locked utility room behind the warehouse. No windows, no furniture. One flickering bulb chained to the ceiling like a noose.
Mira collapsed onto the concrete floor. Sophie crawled into her lap, sobbing until her voice gave out. The silence after that was worse. It was the kind that dug into bone. Mira didn't speak, didn't cry, didn't move. Her mind was somewhere else entirely. Outside the warehouse, past the gates, into the spaces where men like that felt untouchable. She knew now what kind of monster she was dealing with, and she knew this wasn't over. The next morning, the door opened. They brought food, cold rice, 1 egg, 2 bottles of water. One of the men kicked the tray toward them.
Eat, you'll need strength. Boss likes women who work.
The others laughed. Mira didn't respond. She just blinked. Once. Slow. The next few days passed in layers of gray. They let Mira out for chores. Mopping bloodstains, scrubbing engine grease, cooking food for the ones who destroyed her family. She did it without a word, without defiance, without flinching. They called her
Docile now, huh?
One of them spit near her foot. Another brushed a hand against her scalp and chuckled.
Still pretty even without the hair.
She didn't react. Not then. Because she needed time and information. She learned their names. Who smoked? Who drank? Who locked the cabinets? Who forgot to? She watched where they kept the keys, when they passed out, when they argued, which door creaked, which camera glitched every hour. She learned the shape of the lock on the back exit, the sound the gate made when it latched. And she waited, like ash waits for a spark. Because you can survive grief, but survival alone is not justice. Justice takes observation and patience. And when the time is right, a very steady hand. The first blade came easy. Too easy. That's what scared her most. It happened on the 9th day. Cruz, the youngest of the crew, was drunk again, half asleep on a folding chair behind the warehouse, cigarette burning down between his fingers. His jacket had slipped off his shoulder, and there, clipped carelessly to his belt, was a folding knife. Black handle, dull metal clip, nothing special. Except it was everything. Mira was sweeping the loading dock, moving in long, slow motions, deliberate, invisible. She stepped past him. The broom handle tapped the edge of his chair. He didn't stir. She dropped a rag near his feet, bent to pick it up, and just like that, the knife disappeared into her sleeve, like a trick she'd practiced in another life. She didn't smile, didn't blink, just kept walking. Because the trick wasn't in the theft. The trick was in not celebrating. That night, back in the locked room with Sophie asleep against her shoulder, Mira pulled the knife from her sleeve. She unlatched it and stared at the edge. Not too sharp, but sharp enough. She didn't cry. She didn't shake. She simply pressed the cold metal flat against her palm. This wasn't for now, not for anger. This was for balance, for memory, for the part of her they tried to shave off but couldn't reach. She wrapped the blade in cloth, an old piece of Sophie's shirt, and tied it tight with a shoelace. Then she pried a loose tile near the corner drain and buried it there. Deep enough that no one would find it, but close enough that she could reach it in 10 seconds flat. She didn't sleep that night, just sat beside her daughter, counting footsteps in the hallway, planning, breathing, sharpening herself. Because they thought she was done, but Mira Alvarez was not done. She was just getting started. The decision came in the middle of a sentence. Someone laughed, something crude, something forgettable. And Mira, washing blood off a wrench in the corner, realized they thought she was theirs, furniture, background. And that meant they weren't watching her anymore. That night, after lights out, she whispered into her daughter's ear, "Tomorrow, we leave, but I go back, alone." Sophie blinked in the dark.
Why?
Mira stroked her hair. "Because not everyone deserves to leave." The next evening, after the dinner dishes were cleared and the crew started drinking, Mira moved. Keys had been left. She'd seen the ring on the hook by the door for days. She took them when no one looked. Not fast, not careless, just quiet. She dressed Sophie in dark clothes, wrapped her in Leon's old hoodie. Together, they slipped out the side entrance, unlocked, as always, through the back gate, into the alley. No dogs, no alarms. The city was silent, waiting. 3 blocks down, tucked behind an abandoned warehouse, Mira had prepared a place. Weeks ago, she'd noticed it, an old storage shed, broken lock, dry inside. She'd stocked it slowly, pocketed snacks, water bottles, a blanket. It wasn't a home, but it was enough. She settled Sophie in the corner, wrapped the girl up tight, kissed her forehead, and looked at her face. Still so small, still believing in her. "Don't leave till I come back," she whispered. "No matter what." Sophie's lip trembled.
What if you don't?
Mira paused, then lied. "I will." She stood at the door a long moment, then turned and walked back into the dark. Not to escape, not anymore, but to hunt. Because you don't let wolves walk away just because they've eaten their fill. You follow them, and you make sure they never eat again. The warehouse hadn't changed. Still smelled like rust, oil, and something sour beneath the surface. But Mira had changed. She moved like shadow, cut through silence like it owed her something. She slipped through the side entrance. The back gate still hadn't been fixed. Of course it hadn't. They never expected anyone to return, especially not her. Cruz was asleep on a cot near the loading dock, his mouth open, one shoe off, a bottle in his hand. The first time she saw him, he laughed at her bald head. Now she walked past him without even looking at his face. She reached the storage room, lifted the tile, unwrapped the cloth. The knife was still there, still cold, still hers. She found Mendez in the main room, the big one, the loud one, snoring into a torn couch cushion. Mira stepped beside him, kneeled, watched him for a moment, not out of mercy, out of certainty. She covered his mouth, pressed the blade in deep. One quick, practiced motion. Clean. Final. Blood spread slowly across his shirt. His eyes rolled back, confused, then still. She wiped the blade on his pants, covered the body with a tarp. No drama. No warning. Just subtraction. She moved to the hallway, paused near the breaker, turned off one camera. 2 lights. Darkness fell like a curtain. Her stage now. They wouldn't notice until morning, and by then, it would be too late. Because Mira Alvarez wasn't finished. She had names, faces, and time. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply moved forward. 1 step. 1 target. 1 cut at a time. Far away in a hidden shed, a little girl clutched a blanket that didn't belong to her anymore. And somewhere in the dark, a mother walked the path between survival and retribution, barefoot, silent, unstoppable. Cruz lay in a pool of blood. His gun had slipped from his hand. The echo of the shot still rang in her ears, but Mira didn't flinch. There wasn't time. The others could return. A neighbor might call. A patrol car could pass. She had to move. Now. She cleaned the blade one last time in the warehouse sink. Under the flickering light, she caught her reflection on a smudged metal surface. A bald woman, blood-stained shirt, bruised lips, but her eyes, sharp, awake, alive. She wasn't finished yet. Sophie. She had to get to Sophie. The little shack where she'd hidden her daughter stood a few blocks down, tucked between shipping containers. But before that, one man stood in her way, the gate guard. He wasn't like the others. He didn't laugh. He didn't spit. But he looked the other way, and that was enough. Mira didn't hate him, but she didn't forgive him either. She approached from behind the storage units, keeping low. A truck passed. She moved with it, silent as breath. A small rock in her hand, she threw it toward the fence. The guard turned. Instinctively, she lunged. A sharp strike to the temple with the butt of her knife. He crumpled. A quiet thud. Still breathing, but unconscious. She took his keys, his phone, his access card. No hesitation. She ran. Through the side alley, past the grease-stained bins, across the lot. And then,
Mom?
a soft voice trembling. Mira opened the wooden shack. Sophie stood there, barefoot, holding her small doll against her chest. The moment her daughter fell into her arms, Mira felt something burst in her throat. She hadn't cried since Leon died, but now she did. And Sophie did too. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Mira didn't take them far. Not out of the city. Not across the border. Just a few blocks. To a police station with broken fluorescent lights and a vending machine that never worked. She walked in, barefoot, bloody, with her daughter in her arms.
My name is Mira Alvarez,
she told the stunned officer behind the desk.
I escaped captivity. My husband was murdered. I have evidence.
The hours that followed blurred. The medics, the questions, the warm blanket around Sophie's shoulders, the tea someone placed in Mira's hand. She answered everything. Names, dates, details, camera locations, weapons, hidden ledgers. She took them back to the warehouse, showed them the bodies, the weapons, the scars. No one clapped. No one praised her. But for the first time, she wasn't treated like property. She was listened to, believed, documented. Sophie was placed under protective care, but they let her sleep next to her mother at night. One night, the little girl whispered.
Are we safe now?
Mira stared out the window of the hospital room. Streetlights flickered like blinking stars. She said,
We're not safe,
but we're free. She didn't know what would happen next, whether she'd face charges, whether the people behind this ring would all be caught. But she knew this. Leon's death wasn't for nothing. Sophie was alive. And she, Mira Alvarez, was not broke.